Now, Rock Talk with Mitch Lafon.
We are speaking with Will Turpin, of course, of the band Collective Soul. They have re-released the first two albums, Collective Soul and Hints, Allegations, and Things Left Unsaid. 25th anniversary on one of those, as we say in Montreal. Bonjour. How are you, Will?
Marielle.
Yes, even though the shirt says Minnesota, but look, it's a special Rolling Stone shirt, so it counts.
Very cool.
But
yeah, I'm doing great, man. We're down here in Atlanta area, but man, sure do miss touring and especially miss Montreal. The last couple times we've been in Canada, we hadn't had a chance to stop by there, and that's such a great rock and roll city and great rock and roll fans.
It is, when you talk about rock cities, of course, Kiss talks famously of Detroit Rock City, but Boston, New York, Detroit, Chicago, Montreal, those are some of the better places to play in North America, I have to say, just great times.
Yeah, I can vouch for that.
Let's quickly go over these first two. I mean, here we are celebrating 25 years. You're still a band, you're still a collective, so to speak. When these first two albums came out, did you think I'm going to have a 30-year career, a 35-year career? I'm going to be doing this in 2020. What was sort of the take when Hints Allegations first came out?
Yeah, when Hints and Allegations first came out, we were young. I had just joined the band. Our friendships go back to our childhood. We've known each other since our earliest memories, but I had just committed to the band, and it was only months later we got signed to Atlantic Records. And with the first record, we just wanted to get back in the studio as soon as we could to record a true album, which is, what our heroes did albums, and because the first one was kind of a collection of songs, and it wasn't really a true band album. The Hints and Allegation comes out, and we tour over 200 shows that year in '94. We end up at the end of the summer where, we're in front of Woodstock, and by the fall, we're in front of all the amphitheaters with Aerosmith. And so we went right out of that tour from the first record. We recorded a song called Gel for the Jerky Boys soundtrack that we thought could bridge between Hints and the self-titled second record. And that was released on the soundtrack and did well on radio and such. So it did serve as a bridge, but our whole mentality was we want to get back in the studio and do a real record so people can understand really what we think we can do. And it was definitely not, we had been watching Ed work on his songwriting craft at my father's studio, and him and Shane and Ross had been in the band for a while, playing around Atlanta, and I would sit in with them. But even Ed at 29 years old, I don't think any of us thought, oh, no problem, we're going to have a 25-year career, no problem. It's not like we would have doubted that. It's just that it's not what you think about when you're new, fresh on the scene. All we thought about what was right in front of us, and we wanted to crush what was right in front of us. So after the first record, the thing that was right in front of us and most on our mind was the self-titled album, which is why the second record is self-titled, is because we felt like that was the first time we got to go into a studio and do an entire album project. We were always just thinking, man, we got to get more records out. We want another record out, and you can kind of see those first 5 records. Yeah, they came out, and we had 5 records out in 6 years or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you were doing it old school. You were doing it like Aerosmith back in the day, two a year almost.
Well, like I said, those were our heroes. So that's what we wanted to do. We were not thinking 30 years down the road. Heck no, man.
Yeah, can you believe it? So talk to me about that, because Ed and other band members have said that the first one really wasn't the first album. So what was the thought going into that? Instead of putting out maybe an EP or just a single, or actually saying, hey, let's go into the studio and rework these properly and form them into a proper album. What was the thinking of sort of, I don't want to say sort of dumping demos out there, but you sort of just said, okay, here, take this, and then we'll get you on the next one.
Yeah. I remember ideas like let's re-record it. But honestly, it's just one of those things where part of that equation that you have to remember is the song Shine. Uh, it had become, that huge snowball rolling down to the bottom of the hill, and you weren't going to stop it and be like, hey, let's slow this down. Let's re-record this album. So that was probably the main reason why it was Hints and Allegations in the collection of songs, some done as a band, most done by mainly Ed and maybe one or two other people for his songwriter demo. But once it was together and packaged as Collective Soul on the independent label, and Shine had started its progression to being, the most played rock song in 1994.
Number one on Billboard's mainstream rock chart, for those that don't know. I mean, right out of the box, you're number one. I mean,
right
geez.
out of the box. So we quickly changed our mentality to, okay, that's going to be what it is. We're going to be honest about what it is, and we're going to go back in the studio as quick as we can, and we're going to give you something brand new that we think is a better representation of the band. So I think it was partly due with how big the song was that made us think, let's don't waste any time here. Let's just go to the next one. And I got to be honest, Hints and Allegations, I saw, the whole thing getting recorded, and I I didn't record hardly anything on that record, but those songs are great, and they give you a great insight into the 3 years prior to what the band became. So I think it stands alone still as its own little piece, but it's definitely not a band record. And then the second record was, self-titled, and what we intended to be the first band introduction for the people.
I'm going to ask you two follow-ups on that. So the album comes out, Shine goes to number one. Obviously, the record company gets excited and goes, "Oh, we've got something here. These boys can make money for us." Do they start running? Is there pressure that's put on you right away of you need to write another Shine, you need to get back in the studio, you need to get a proper first? Like what was the reaction? Was it celebratory, or was it like, "Hey, we got a cash cow. Let's start milking it"?
We had some great relationships at Atlantic Records, and still have some of those great friends that we created back in the day. That's a good question. And I think they looked at our career very differently than they did a lot of others, because they didn't have anything to do with the first record, and we sold 1.5 million records in 1 year. So the second record came around, time for us to record. Jason Flom came down and visited, played some golf, but it was basically, y'all did it last time, we're going to see if y'all can do it again. Nobody was trying to stick their fingers in our pie, so to speak. And we didn't need that. We had, and it's always been this way with us. And still 25 years later, it's the same way. We didn't necessarily need somebody else's input on the creative side. So once the second record was successful, then the pattern was set. And they never really showed up and told us what they wanted or what they needed on a creative side. They allowed Ed and Collective Soul to do and be what we wanted to be. And pressure aside, there's no one that puts more pressure on themselves than we do,
All right, then the band themselves. Just quickly, you mentioned Jason Flom. Jason, of course, famously signed Skid Row and a bunch of others. What was it like working with him? Because he's sort of one of these unknown to the masses geniuses. You think of John Kolodner, you think of David Geffen. So Jason's one of those guys.
He's right there with the names he's associated with. Yeah.
So what was that collection like, and what does he, as a veteran of the industry, tell a young band in 1994, 95? Does he give you great advice? Does he just say, "Hey, just get," what's he like?
I think things were just so easy for us. I don't think he felt like he had to give us any guidance or words of wisdom. It was more keep doing this, and I'll keep doing my thing. I'll keep making sure we put the marketing into your records, and I'll make sure that we, get these records heard by the radio and people who are the ways into getting it heard to
The
his band.
gatekeepers, as we call them.
The gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are much more expanded these days. So there's a lots of ways in now,
Now they're
but
called
some of those
publicists.
things.
Just real quick, since Jason is there and you're talking about sort of the machinery of putting the money in for tour support and money in for getting you on radio and getting you the spins and all that. Last year you put out Blood. If fans haven't heard about it or haven't checked it out, you must. It is a great rock record, but how different is it releasing Blood in 2019 to releasing sort of quote unquote the Blue album in 95? You know, is it sort of do it yourself? Was there any bit of help in marketing and push at radio? Is it completely different or is it sort of different?
It's really kind of completely different, although Fred Crochal with Crochal Entertainment Group, he kind of serves as our label, so he can still deal with bigger business issues that we don't really understand or get into as far as an overall marketing plan. But compared to, obviously compared to the second record, all through the 90s, our marketing budget would have been, I don't remember really seeing marketing budgets because we were just so busy, we didn't care. But I know videos alone, we'd spend $500,000 on 3 videos in the blink of an eye. We spend
Recoupment costs, everybody's favorite words.
It took us a while, but it happened. And most people don't get to recoup when they spend that much money. The record label was spending a lot of money with Collective Soul. But we did recoup, and we do the same thing, but the budgets are drastically different, and it is more of let's go, let's spend less money recording. I mean, our recording budgets would have been $250,000 back in the day in the blink of an eye as well, And we're doing records. We're trying to do records for $70,000-$80,000. That includes where we're living, food, and everything else. So
what a drastic change. Let me ask you just also quickly about the genre of music, because for a while there, you were lumped in with the grunge guys. And I was like, I'm not really sure that fits. You brought sort of a Southern experience or a Southern sound to this rock thing. What was that like in terms of first being labeled and sort of saying, well, no, we're not this. I mean, we're not Aerosmith and Poison and Motley Crue, but we're certainly not Nirvana and, Brother Kane. Actually, maybe you're closer to Brother Kane. But what was that like, having that label and sort of saying, yeah, no, and shaking it off?
Obviously during the era, grunge was so big. If you were successful on radio and you're a rock band, you would sometimes just naturally get kind of put with that. And it is rock and roll. And I can say truly some of the grunge gets a lot of its rock licks from Southern rock. I mean, talk to Mike McCready from Pearl Jam. He'll tell you, yeah, it all comes from some of my favorite Southern rock bands. But their style was different. Back in the day, I remember enjoying the fact that one writer or one listener or one DJ would call us this, another one call us that. And what I realized real quickly is they really couldn't pigeonhole us. Our sound is eclectic, to say the least. There's, if you listen to our records, there's World I Know on the same record as The River Flows, which is about as straight ahead hard rock as a song can get, mixed with a beautiful pop melody and a string section on the same record with World I Know. So I took pride in the fact, and we all had very, very broad listening base as far as what we grew up listening to. I mean, my father had the studio. Ed and Dean's father was a music minister. We had gospel, we had country music, we had Southern rock. In the 80s, we were all big fans of U2, The Cars, NXS. Those were the bands that inspired us in the 80s. REM, of course, from Atlanta. So our tastes were very diverse as well. And I just found solace in the fact that nobody could really pigeonhole us. We'd hear grunge, and then we'd hear Southern rock, and then we'd hear pop rock. And truly, what we'd always say to people, and this is kind of how I'll end that statement or this phrase is, we would always say to people, look, if the Beatles were a rock band, then Collective Soul is a rock band. And that's all we have to say about that. You know?
Yeah, you really are. I've always sort of looked at, when they talk about hair metal, they say Tesla, and I go, that's not really hair metal. And
Mm,
then when you say collective soul, you go grunge. I go, nah, they're kind of like the Tesla of the grunge of the grunge movement.
right.
You know. So since we're talking about the 25th anniversary of the Blue album, for the lack of a better word, what was that like going in? The first one comes out, you have some success, you're ready to go do the real first collective soul album. In terms of songwriting and participation and organizing it, what was that like? Did you sort of say, Ed, here, you just go do everything and I'll just play bass on it and Dean will just do the rhythms? Or was there really, and not to be a punny, but was there a collective where you sat in a room and said, okay, we're going to craft these band songs together?
Yeah, there's always a collective, but Ed is the prolific songwriter, man. He comes with he comes with the front part of the attack of how every song is going to go. And there are some songs where he's got a verse and chorus, and he's got the chord progression written out, and we kind of put our little space in there with our instruments or whatever comments we might make with arrangement as far as that goes. But yeah, I mean, on the second record, there wasn't too many that came from a straight up band jam. It was ideas that Ed had. I'd say the song Untitled, we had played live a lot, so it had morphed into a good rock band where we all had morphed it. But these are songs and riffs that all start in Ed's head, and how they get completed is more of a band thing. But and still today, man, you mentioned Blood and recording in 2019. I mean, still today, I feel like when we get in the studio, it's as creative as it's ever been, man.
Yeah, in fact, talk to me about that. In terms of writing in 2019, how do you see Ed's songwriting progression? Is he writing sort of the same songs or has he progressed? Because I'm assuming as you get older, as your life experience changes, as your financial situation changes, it's kind of hard to write sort of those spit and vinegar songs from back in the day. Um, does his songwriting seem more reflective? Does it seem more refined? Is he just the same old Ed? How do you, as a band member, judge his songs? Maybe
Mm-hmm.
not judge, but interpret his songs.
Well, yeah, I can interpret and I can say, oh, okay, that's the Ed Roland I know from from years ago, and man, that's it's still beautiful. What a sentiment, And then sometimes I'm like, okay, that's fresh, man. I can't describe I can't think of another word other than prolific. He's just his inspiration and his ideas come from so many different angles. Um, that he still finds the inspiration for the spit and vinegar tune, so to speak. Listen to Over Me from Blood. It's edgy, man, and here we are 25 years later, and it's really edgy, aggressive rock and roll.
It really is. Talk to me about this. You're 10 albums in. You've never really taken a break. I think the longest break between albums was 4 years, 5 years, something like that. What sort of keeps the band going? Because at this point, your collective soul, you have the Blue album, you have those first ones. You can go do a 25th anniversary album tour. You can just go play Shine 15 times over and play the. Why do you sit down and say, okay, we're going to keep making new music and keep having them out every 2 or 3 years? What keeps you motivated to be creative, to stay creative?
I don't know. If I could bottle that up and sell it, I would. But it's in all of us, and it's what fulfills us, and it's what makes us feel happy. We just got since we're not touring this summer, we just quit, or we kind of paused. We were recording for 2 weeks straight at Ed's house, so we've basically recorded another record already this summer. It's what gets our blood flowing. It's what charges us up, and it's that I think, especially with music, it's nothing you have to put a timestamp on and figure out, oh, I'm done with this. It's if it's still what inspires us and makes our blood flow, then man, we kind of have to get in there and do that together.
Now, not too long ago, one of our first interviews was for, and you put out Serengeti Drivers, I should say, plural. Um, in terms of doing music outside of the band, is that something that you just wanted to get out of your system? Is that something you're still actively pursuing? And what sort of do you get out of doing something that has the Will name on it rather than Collective Soul name on it?
Yeah, I mean, when with Collective Soul, I feel like I'm really comfortable with that rhythm section position and trying to be the glue between Ed's ideas and the rhythm section and making it sound like a really, really put together aggressive rock band. But my creativity really started on the piano, and it was my first instrument, piano, um, to percussion and drum set, and learned the guitar around 13. And really, I told the guys in Collective Soul I'd play bass, and I'd never played a bass, which wasn't really an issue. And I've told that story many times. But um, with Serengeti Drivers and my other style, I mean, my grand piano is sitting right there. I've always sat down behind piano and had different ideas. There's a funky poppy side to me, and with my solo work, you can hear it. And almost all those songs start out with me on piano, and I develop the songs. A handful of them might start out with an acoustic riff, but it's a little more Americana, a little more funky pop, and it's from a different angle in my head, so to speak. If I was with Collective Soul and had a bass on, nothing that I would create would really sound like any of these tunes. So it fulfills me to be able to create outside of Collective Soul and let people see that other side of me. And it was, yeah, Serengeti Drivers was really good run for me, and
Yeah.
allowed me to play some good venues by myself, and get out there and, like I said, stretch my wings outside of Collective Soul. We've always thought, me, Ed, and Dean. Dean has Magnets and Ghosts. Ed has Sweet Tea Project. Also recorded bass on a solo project for Ed that's amazing. But we've always had the mentality of, if we can create outside of Collective Soul, it makes us stronger when we get back together as Collective Soul. So we support each other's endeavors outside of the band, and ultimately we feel like that makes us stronger as well.
It does. Now, your dad had a studio that he opened up back in the mid '70s. What was that like to be around a studio, to learn from your father, to see these different musicians come in? Was that sort of where you cut your teeth, where you got to see, country artists and Americana artists and bluegrass and all these guys come in and record? What was that like from your perspective in your development musically to be in that environment?
I mean, I contribute a lot of my musical development to being able to understand different elements of different music and become friends with some of those people. I mean, um, understanding different genres and watching people work in a studio, that's invaluable. I can't put a finger on what it meant to me and the musician that I am now, but the memories are there. And I remember bluegrass bands sticking out to me and being really cool. I remember some R&B bands that came down there, and I was like, what a cool sound. Oh, look how he's playing bass, man. He's playing with his thumb, Um, so those moments, yeah. And then along the way, my father would never skip a moment to try to teach me something or show me something about how the studio works, even at the youngest of ages. So most of those lessons are all still with me today, and are still a strong part of who I am. I think it's, without my father's studio, that, Ed doesn't have a spot to work on his career for, from between his years at Berkeley and Boston, and until we got signed at Atlantic Records, he was head engineer there. And my father gave him green light to work on his material whenever there was no artist in there or no paying customer, so to speak. That was the hub for the whole band. Without that place, it's hard to say what would have been. Probably no Collective Soul.
Wow, that's actually a huge statement in terms of recording process, because now we Pro Tools everything, we auto tune everything, we fly stuff in, we fly stuff out. Looking back at the way your dad was doing it, cutting 2-inch tape, gluing stuff together. I mean, right, the good old days. You learning that you had to play it live to catch it live. Not comp everything. Uh, how do you approach Collective Souls recording? Do you think back of that old sort of way where you sort of had to do 3-4 takes and let's get it right? Or are you in a process now where, screw it, we're just going to go all technology, throw Ed into an auto tune, throw my bass into a loop, I'll play one note and just fly it in 100 times? How do you sort of approach it? Old school, new school?
Uh, we have always embraced the new school, but our philosophy on why music is popular, why when those frequencies hit people's ears, it can change the way they think and feel. Our philosophy is the performance and the emotion that you can put into the music. And there's only one way to get that. It's not through comping, it's not through editing bass tracks, and it's certainly not through auto tune, unless you're using that as an effect, which some people use that as an interesting effect. So yeah, even still today, on the Blood record, almost all those rhythm tracks have barely been edited. We sit there and what we do, we find that once we get the arrangement and we get the direction of the energy of the song, the ups and downs, how this song is gonna, how we're gonna try to lay it down. Once we get there, we get hyper focused on recording the tracks and capturing that emotion. If we don't capture the emotion, there's not a computer, there's not ones and zeros that can capture that emotion. And the only way to capture it, this is our philosophy. Every people have different ideas, and of course, in certain genres, the pop world and other genres, it's different. But if you can't capture the emotion, if you can't capture that feel in the song, you don't have anything. So, do we use Pro Tools and DigiDesign? Absolutely. We had, matter of fact, I think we get credit as the first, going back to the second record, we get credited as the first band to do an entire record with DigiDesign Pro Tools. But you have to capture the performance. If you don't capture feel and emotion in your performance, then I don't think you got anything real. To me, you don't have anything. So
I agree.
we're focused on these tracks. That's how we do it.
Yeah, I think you need to capture the emotion, and sometimes you need to leave in an imperfection. You listen to any early Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Alice Cooper, name any band, they're playing ahead of the beat, they're offbeat, there's a bad, and people spend years and years trying to learn how to make those mistakes live because you can't recreate that magic. And then we'll finish on this. You did mention a new album, and what is sort of the progress on that with the whole COVID thing? Have you just said, screw it, we'll get back to it in 2021, or do you finish it faster? Yeah, pretty much. Screw it, we're out of here.
No, there's another record day coming up in October, I believe. So we're trying to package something to release pre-Christmas and stuff. And we do have some shows on the books in October, but still, 5 months later, 6 months later, things are changing day by day. So I don't know if we'll even play a single show this year.
Yeah, it's
but
kind of hard.
We're trying to package something pre-Christmas.
In fact, I lied. Let me finish on this. In terms of the shows, it's kind of hard because, you look at October and you think, okay, with social distancing, maybe we can get it done. And then bands head off to Sturgis, and right away CNN is, oh, Smash Mouth played Sturgis. Oh, Buck Cherry played Sturgis. Oh, poor Night Ranger, they play. And they get sort of vilified. And how do you sort of manage that as a band? Because you sort of need to play for the fans and make the money and the whole thing. But do you hurt the brand if you play at this point? I mean, it's sort of.
I think those are things you got to think about. It shouldn't be.
It's lose, basically.
Yeah, it shouldn't be, and I kind of agree in one regard. It shouldn't be, oh, let's just play on stage regardless of what else is going on in the world, i.e. a pandemic. so you got to think about those things. And I got to be honest, we were on the Sturgis bill, and it was canceled way back when, and then all of a sudden they started trying to bring it back. And I don't know if we just, I'm not in on every conversation with management. I don't know if we just told them no, or if we weren't asked when it was coming, when they started trying to get bands back. But we were on the bill early this spring to play Sturgis, and of course we didn't go. Yeah, I think you got to always think about those things when you're a band, because you can easily, get put in a spot that's really not a lot of your doing. But it's
tough. It's
such hard questions, because you want to play live, and you also, but in the same breath, you also don't want to needlessly endanger somebody else's life, so.
And yourselves. I mean, it's not just about the other person. You don't want to go catch COVID because you played Shine for the millionth time. I mean, it's.
Yeah, I've already had it.
Okay, anyway, it's just strange because it falls sort of both ways. You go play and yay, we're moving forward, but then you get vilified, and it's just like, well,
I can't vilify those bands, and I don't think anything negative of them. I know that we didn't do it, and that's all I can tell you.
Yeah, and I can tell you as a guy who makes a living going to shows and reviewing, I'm not going, and I don't have any intentions on it, but. I think it's to each his own, I guess.
Each his own in a certain regard, but this thing is so weird with the asymptomatics and such.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not
really know whose life you're going to affect, even though you made a decision that had nothing to do with them.
Right.
When you come home, who knows?
Well, and that's the thing about Sturgis. When all those bikers start going home, who knows? Anyway, whatever. We can.
Right. We all got big question marks with this whole thing, but
yeah. But all I know is I'm not ready. I've been invited to a couple of these drive-in shows locally in Montreal, and I'm just like, no, I'm not yet. And call me whatever you want, but I'm not yet. I'm not ready. This is what I prefer. The Zoom. Hopefully we can't get sick over Zoom. Anyway, Will, always a pleasure. Merci beaucoup. And I will, of course, remind folks that the first two albums have been re-released, deluxe editions, bonus tracks.
On vinyl as well.
On vinyl as well. On CD too. Can't forget the CD buyers, where there's still a few of us out there. Pick them up, enjoy them again, and as we say in Montreal, merci beaucoup. Thank you so much.
Merci.
Absolute
Cheers,
pleasure.
Thank you, man.
Always a pleasure. We will catch you online, and make sure to follow Will on Twitter and all that wonderful stuff. There you go. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank y'all.
Let me end that.
See you, Mitch. Next time, buddy.
Cheers. Bye now.